Now, going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have Bud Light bribe $150 million attempting to buy and keep shelf space, as well as keep the distributors happy after their sales precipitously continue to crash lower and lower and lower. Now, this is all thanks to the brilliant brainchild, Alyssa Heiderchild, who was very proud about being the very first woman executive for marketing at Anheuser-Busch InBev. She thought it was a brilliant idea. They're going to partner up with Dylan Mulvaney, an up-and-coming TikTok star who's best known for being a trans activist and having the YouTube or TikTok series rather, in which Dylan was again biological male, dressing up in women's clothes and makeup and all the other accessories, in which Dylan proclaimed to have a day of womanhood all the way up to 365. And then to celebrate that 365th day, Anheuser-Busch InBev sent this person a can with their face on it, which, interestingly enough, that perhaps is the most valuable piece of marketing memorabilia in history because of the historical impact it had. Because I say that no company's ever messed up more, I believe, in history. In fiscal Q2, they lost $400 million in sales, just gone, compared to the same fiscal period last year. And every week, sales are down about 30% for Bud Light brand specifically by dollar amount. Per volume, it's usually 26 to 27% by volume. Now, they've had this issue, huge cultural backlash. And then you also have people, when Bud Light didn't quote-unquote stand with Dylan, well, then they alienated people on the far left who are standing for this trans activist. Oh, many people are also concerned, Dylan's average age in terms of who watches this individual on the TikTok is 15 years old. So for some odd reason, marketing alcohol towards that age group, many people didn't think that was a prudent business idea. Who would have thought? But nevertheless, everyone got pissed off, and even people in the mill were confused and annoyed, and they just don't want to have a lecture every time they try to enjoy a beer. Although you could also debate how many people truly enjoyed Bud Light prior to the incident. That perhaps requires some investigative journalism, though I almost dare not experience it firsthand because I would have to inebriate or drink a Bud Light, which, might kill me. You never know, the taste itself. But nevertheless, Anheuser-Busch has a big problem. They're losing sales week after week. Now, one of the biggest things that keep you in business when you're a big box company like that is shelf space. Some companies take decades to get on that shelf, especially at Walmart. That's some of the most valuable real estate on the planet, bar none. And because their sales has dropped so far, Walmart and 7-Eleven, those are the two major brands that they've been talking about in terms of losing their shelf space, are decreasing their shelf space considerably. Which, again, takes years to get that shelf space. And with beer, a lot of people buy it on a whim. They don't put it down on a list because, again, you don't need it, especially if it's Bud Light. Well, you could also argue no one needs Bud Light. But nevertheless, when it comes to like a grocery list that you write down, not a lot of people actually, I would argue, put that down as a necessity. They get by it as an impulse, similar to people who buy high fructose corn syrup at the checkout, or also known as candy bars. But it's one of those issues where if it's on the shelf and you see it, you'll buy it. So the more you see it, the more likely you are to buy it, perhaps. So that's why this is a big threat. The sales are already down. If they lose the shelf space, well, it just makes the situation that much worse. So Anheuser-Busch InBev is thinking, how can we maybe remediate the situation? We're going to spiff these companies or bribe them, whatever term you prefer. We're going to give a huge fiscal incentive for them not to take away our shelf space and not to stop distributing a product that no one is buying. Well, I should not be so bombastic. 30% of people are saying they will not buy. I don't know if there's an issue in the United States with taste buds where 70% of Americans don't have taste buds anymore. That perhaps is an issue we need to address in full with another investigation. But they still have 70% of their sales. So, relatively speaking, the glass is half full. Now, again, the glass is 70% full, but with Bud Light, so you could argue it's also worth, you'd rather have an empty glass to begin with. But nevertheless, now, this is thanks to the New York Post, and they're talking about $150 million in incentives, which, again, imagine being the number one beer for about 20 years. You didn't have to do anything. You just put out a country music commercial, sponsor a sports balls game, and then one marketing initiative just tanked your company overnight. That's the business brilliance of Alyssa Heiderchild and Dylan Mulvaney. You see, that was sarcasm. It was a business blunder of the century, bar none. Now, it looks like specifically they're actually putting these incentives to the distributors and the beer companies to keep the shelves stocked with their product, because these retailers are more and more reassigning the space towards the beer brands that actually are selling, such as Coors, Yangling, as well as, what was the best? Miller, which shows how much I actually consume beer. Personally, I usually prefer spirits when the occasion calls for it, but nevertheless, let's see here. In terms of the specifics, they're calling it a market share incentive. So the largest brewer told the distributors hit by the Bud Light fiasco that it's established a marketing recovery incentive program, also known as "We're paying you, please for the love of God, don't stop shipping our beer." And that program is beginning second half. Oh, it's going to be beginning the second half of 2024 through the end of next year. This is according to the memo from Anheuser-Busch Chief Commercial Officer Kyle Norrington, the trade publication reported, which, again, so much money they're trying to throw at this situation where they could have fixed this. You tell us Heckler and Koch, or Koch, depending on how you pronounce it, is a very popular German arms manufacturer. They've been around forever, most well known for prolifically creating the MP5. Now, they had an issue where the social media gal decided to do a business blunder of the day, and they decided to talk about pronouns and culturally sensitive topics that alienate a certain part of your customer base, which I would say if you're talking about firearms, more often than not, they're conservative. And within 24 hours, HK addressed the post on Twitter and said, "Hey, we do not want to get into politics. That's not our brand." And they leaned into the meme brilliantly. I say that because they actually had a picture of the Jurassic Park dinosaur excrement, and there's a meme on it, and they said, "New HK social media manager coming into," which that was a funny meme to put out. They're addressing the situation. They're talking about how they messed up. And of all the companies to actually come back, or in terms of, I don't know if you want to call it unwelcomify the company, that's the most bizarre one, because if you look at HK, that company in particular, they get a majority of their revenue comes from government contracts. The civilian market for them, it's an aftermarket. It's basically sprinkles on the cake, metaphorically speaking. It's a very little part, which is why if you go to most stores in the United States for guns, they either have no HK display, and I say display like a show display with all the firearms that they create. They either have a very small show display, or no display at all. They don't carry the product. But again, that's a good example of, culturally speaking, and from a business perspective, how you could turn the situation around. Anheuser-Busch, it's almost as if they're trying everything to make the situation worse, or darn near. And it just, even with all this money, and again, let me know in the comments. It's one of those things where money doesn't fix all problems, especially when you made a mistake and not willing to admit it. I can it being perhaps a good metaphor for Bud Light. Is Bud Light the Jaden Smith of beers? That'd be interesting. That perhaps might be the most apt metaphor I've thought of. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that's the best metaphor thus far? Now, it'd be interesting to see. Let me know in the comments. Again, they're putting all these incentives. They're trying to basically buy time, because that's what they're doing. They're paying to keep it on the shelf because they think it will eventually sell. And again, they're still selling 70% of their beer, depending on what you really want to call it. They're also giving a lot of it away with the sweepstakes, another topic for another time. But they're trying to buy time to keep that shelf space because they desperately need it if they ever want to regain the volume of product and the sales of product. And again, this is for next 2024 second half. Will the situation be gone by then? A lot of analysts, a lot of people are saying these sales are gone, you're never going to get them back. Let me know in the comments. Do you think, again, this isn't really addressing the issue. This is them just buying shelf space and trying to buy time. Do you think there's enough time for that to actually happen? And then, is that enough? It'll be interesting to see, but as I would say, time shall tell. Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time in to do today. Don't forget to take time to like, subscribe, and comment. Again, I'm trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October, so you can click that button. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, the comments and the feedback make the show better and better, and I appreciate it, even if it's critical, because that's how you improve the most, I would argue. Also, and lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.